Good morning all students. Welcome to Department of Anatomy. Today we will see about remaining part of tracts of spinal cord. In the previous lecture we have seen about ascending tracts of spinal cord, that is sensory pathways. Today we will see about descending tracts of spinal cord, that is the motor pathways. So these descending tracts of spinal cord, they originate from the cerebral cortex and brain stem, and they terminate at different levels in spinal cord. Main function of these descending tracts, they are concerned for control of movements, that is they are mainly for the voluntary movements of skeletal muscle. They control the voluntary movements of skeletal muscle. They are also concerned for maintenance of muscle tone, spinal reflexes and equilibrium. They are also concerned for modulation of sensory transmission to the higher center from periphery, and they are also responsible for spinal autonomic functions. So these motor pathways or descending tracts, they influence the anterior horn cell neurons of spinal cord, and these motor pathways or descending tracts, they are divided into two types, that is the direct pathway. They are also called as pyramidal tracts, and they are mainly responsible for voluntary movements of skeletal muscles. In this diagram you can see this direct pathway, that is name here it is given, that is the corticospinal tract. So it is the example of that pyramidal tract. So it starts in the cerebral cortex and they directly end in spinal cord. So that is the direct pathway, and they are also called as pyramidal tracts. Second is the indirect pathways or subcortical pathways, and they are mainly responsible for maintenance of posture, and these pathways, they are called as extrapyramidal pathways. In this diagram you can see cerebral cortex. First it send impulses to nuclei in the brain stem, and then after that the fibers arising from these nuclei in the brain stem, and then they descend to the spinal cord as the descending tract of spinal cord. Here that is the tectospinal tract. It starts in the superior colliculus and ends in spinal cord. So these descending tracts of spinal cord, they are of two types, that is pyramidal tracts, and main example is the corticospinal tract. Then extrapyramidal tracts, they arise from subcortical centers, and these are the reticulospinal tract, which arises from the reticular formation to the spinal cord, tectospinal tract from the superior colliculus to the spinal cord, rubrospinal tract from the red nucleus to the spinal cord, vestibulospinal tract, that is from the vestibular nucleus to the spinal cord, and olivospinal from the olivary nucleus to the spinal cord. These descending tracts, they also includes descending autonomic fibers, that is the higher centers for this autonomic nervous system, that is mainly the hypothalamus, and from these higher centers the fibers, they descend downward in spinal cord, and they relay in the intermediate region, that is in the region of lateral horn, which is autonomic in function in the nuclei, that is intermedio-medial and intermedio-lateral. So these descending autonomic fibers, they also under this descending tracts of spinal cord. So first we will see about pyramidal tracts. These pyramidal tracts, they carry impulses which regulates the precise and voluntary muscular movements, that is the precise and voluntary movements of skeletal muscles. These tracts consist of fibers that take origin from the motor cortex of cerebrum, mainly from the motor cortex, and some fibers, they also arise from sensory cortex. And this pyramidal tract, it consists of two types of fibers, that is corticonuclear fibers and corticospinal fibers. These corticonuclear fibers, after arising from this motor cortex, they relay in the various motor nuclei of cranial nerves on the contralateral side. For example, that is the motor nuclei of third, fourth and sixth cranial nerves, which supplies or regulates the movements of extraocular muscles. Then motor nucleus of facial nerve for the movements of muscles of face. Then nucleus ambiguous, that is for the 9th, 10th and 11th nerves, which supplies muscles of soft palate, pharynx and larynx. And last, that is the motor nucleus of hypoglossal nerve, through which that hypoglossal nerve, it supplies muscles of tongue. So these corticonuclear fibers, they relay in the motor nuclei of various cranial nerves on the contralateral side, and through these nuclei they control the precise and voluntary skillful movements of these skeletal muscles. The next is the corticospinal tract. We will see later on. They form, these pyramidal tracts, they form a part of motor pathway that extends from brain to skeletal muscles. In its pathway, it consists of two sets of neurons. As we have seen in the ascending tracts of spinal cord which go to cerebral cortex, there are three neurons, that is first order neurons, second order and third order neurons. Like that, in these motor pathways, it consists of two sets of neurons, and that is, first set is the upper motor neuron, and this upper motor neuron, they lie in area number 4, 6 of cerebral cortex, that is the motor area, and they project to lower motor neurons. Then second set of neurons is the lower motor neurons, and these lower motor neurons, they are situated in anterior horn of spinal cord, that is the alpha and gamma neurons, and the motor nuclei of various cranial nerves. Axons arising from these lower motor neurons innervate the skeletal muscles. Now we will see about corticospinal tracts. This corticospinal tract, it is a type of pyramidal tract. Now first we will see about origin of that tract. These fibers of this corticospinal tract, they arise from area number, mainly from the area number 4, that is the motor area in the cerebral cortex, which is situated in the precentral gyrus, and the premotor area, that is the area number 6. And some fibers, they also arise from area number 3, 1, 2, that is the primary sensory area, and also from the area number 5. So 1/3 fibers, they arise from area number 4, 1/3 fibers, they arise from area number 6, and remaining 1/3 fibers, they arise from sensory areas. So this is the origin. After taking origin, these fibers, they descend through the corona radiata. This corona radiata, it is the flat bundle of fibers in which the fibers, they are arranged in radiating manner. And this corona radiata, it consists of various ascending and descending fibers to the cerebral cortex. From this corona radiata, these fibers, they aggregate and form a compact bundle, and that pass through the posterior limb of internal capsule, which is situated between medially thalamus and the lentiform nucleus laterally. Then from the internal capsule, they enter into the crus cerebri of midbrain. In the crus cerebri of the midbrain, they occupy the middle 3/5 portion of that crus cerebri. From the crus cerebri, they descend in the basilar part of pons, and from the basilar part of pons, they descend in the pyramids of medulla. These pyramids of medulla, that is pyramid of medulla, these are the longitudinal elevations on the anterior surface of medulla, and these elevations, they are produced due to these corticospinal fibers. And this corticospinal tract, it is called as pyramidal tract because these fibers, they are present within these pyramids, and the extrapyramidal tract fibers, they are not present within this pyramid, so they are called as extrapyramidal, and the corticospinal tract fibers, they are called as pyramidal tracts because they are present in these pyramids of medulla. Then at the lower part of pyramids of medulla, these fibers, about 80 to 90% fibers, they cross to the opposite side and they continue in the spinal cord in the lateral funiculus as the lateral corticospinal tract, and remaining 10 to 20% fibers, they descend downward in the anterior funiculus of spinal cord on the same side as the anterior corticospinal tract. Now in this, you can see in this figure that fibers arising from this cerebral cortex, that is mainly from the motor area and some fibers from the sensory area. Then these fibers, they descend through this corona radiata in which the fibers, they are arranged in radiating manner. Then these fibers, they aggregate and they enters into the internal capsule where it lies between the thalamus and the lentiform nucleus. From this internal capsule, it descends downward and lies in the, that is the crus cerebri of the midbrain in the middle 3/5 part. Then descend downward in the anterior part of the pons, that is the basilar part of the pons. From the anterior part of the pons, they descend into pyramid of medulla, and in the lower part of medulla, that is at the lower end of the pyramid, it's 90% fibers, about 80 to 90% fibers, they cross to the opposite side and they descend downward in the lateral funiculus of spinal cord as the lateral corticospinal tract, and remaining that 10 to 20% fibers, they descend downward in the anterior funiculus as the anterior corticospinal tract. Now we'll see about lateral corticospinal tract. So what is this lateral corticospinal tract? That is corticospinal fibers, about 80 to 90% corticospinal fibers, they cross in the pyramidal decussation at the lower part of medulla, and they continue as the lateral corticospinal tract. So location of this tract. This tract, it extends throughout the spinal cord and it lies in the lateral funiculus of spinal cord, anterolateral to this posterior horn of spinal cord, and medial to posterior spinocerebellar tract, and dorsal to rubrospinal tract. So this is the location of this lateral corticospinal tract. Then origin of this tract, it is same as that of the corticospinal tract, but only difference is that if that is the right side lateral corticospinal tract, its origin, it lies in the opposite side of cerebral cortex. So if that is the lateral corticospinal, then neurons of its origin, they lie in the left side of the cerebral cortex. Then after its origin, after crossing, these fibers, they descend downward in the lateral funiculus as a lateral corticospinal tract. In the cervical region, this tract, it is larger in size, because in this tract it consists of about 55% fibers of the cervical fibers, 20% fibers, that is thoracic fibers, and remaining 25% fibers, they are of the lumbosacral region. So when it descends downward, its size decreases, as in the cervical region that 55% fibers, they relay at different levels in the cervical region. Then remaining 20% fibers, they relay in the thoracic region, and as it descends in this lumbosacral region, it decreases in size and it only consists of about 25% fibers which relay in at different levels of spinal cord. Then anterior corticospinal tract. So this, what is this anterior corticospinal tract? So in the pyramidal decussation, only 80 to 90% fibers cross to the opposite side, and remaining fibers, they descend downward on the same side in the anterior funiculus, and they lie on the side of anterior median fissure as the anterior corticospinal tract. This tract, it extends up to the mid thoracic level, that is, it is absent in the lower thoracic, lumbar and sacral region. It is present only up to the mid thoracic level, that is, it is present in the cervical segments and the upper thoracic segments. Then course of this tract, that after its origin, that is remaining fibers, uncrossed fibers, they descend downward on the same side in the anterior funiculus, and they terminate in the anterior horn of the opposite side. That is, before termination, these fibers of anterior corticospinal tract, they cross to the opposite side and they terminate on the anterior horn of cells of anterior horn of this opposite side. Now termination of these corticospinal fibers, majority of fibers, that is both lateral corticospinal and the anterior corticospinal tracts, they first terminate in the lamina 7 and 8, which consist of interneurons, and through these interneurons they terminate on the motor neurons of spinal cord, that is the alpha and gamma motor neurons, and axons arising from these alpha and gamma motor neurons, they pass through ventral root of spinal nerve, which is motor in function, and then it supplies the skeletal muscles. About 2% fibers directly terminate on lower motor neuron. Fibers arising from sensory area, that is, these corticospinal fibers, 1/3 fibers, they also arise from this sensory area, that is area number 3, 1, 2. They terminate in lamina 4 to 7, and the fibers which arise from this sensory area, these fibers do not control motor activity, but these fibers, they regulate the input of sensory impulses in the dorsal horn of spinal cord. The function of these corticospinal tracts or the pyramidal tracts, it is mainly concerned with contraction of skeletal muscles. So hence it controls the voluntary, precise, skillful movements of opposite side of body, and these, they mainly act on the distal parts of the limb which are responsible for the precise movements. It has facilitatory influence on the flexor muscles and inhibitory influence on the extensor muscles, and these fibers, corticospinal fibers, they also regulate the sensory information passing through various ascending tracts of spinal cord, and these fibers which having function of this sensory information, regulation of sensory information, they arise in the sensory cortex, that is the area number 3, 1, 2. So this is about the pyramidal tracts which consist of corticonuclear fibers and corticospinal fibers. These corticospinal fibers, they form two tracts, that is the lateral corticospinal tract, which is mainly cross tract, it consists of cross fibers, and anterior corticospinal tract, it consists of uncrossed fibers. But before termination, these anterior corticospinal tract fibers, they cross to the opposite side and then they terminate on the contralateral side, that is the anterior horn of contralateral side spinal cord. Clinical anatomy of these corticospinal fibers. Lesions of corticospinal tract above the level of pyramidal decussation. If there is a lesion above the level of pyramidal decussation, that leads to loss of voluntary movements on the opposite half of body. If that lesion, it is below the decussation, that results in loss of voluntary movements on the same side of body, and this is the upper motor neuron type of paralysis. In your physiology, you have already studied about this upper motor and the lower motor neuron type of paralysis. So you read from physiology. This upper motor neuron paralysis, it main features, that is a spastic paralysis and the positive Babinski sign. This spastic paralysis means that is the tone of the muscle, it is increased. Actually there is no paralysis of muscles, but control on the motor neurons of spinal cord, it is removed due to the lesion of these corticospinal fibers, and these spinal neurons, motor neurons, they become hyperactive. So there is increase in tone and there is spasticity or paralysis. Also there is Babinski's sign positive, that means when there is stroking of sole of foot, normally there is plantar flexion of toes, but in these corticospinal lesions, after stroking of lateral side of foot, that there is the dorsiflexion of great toe and the fanning of other toes. That is the Babinski sign. So this is about the clinical anatomy, and this is about the corticospinal tract, that is the pyramidal tract, that is its location, its origin, course, termination, functions and clinical anatomy. Now we will see about second part of this descending tract, that is the extrapyramidal motor tracts or extrapyramidal descending tracts. These extrapyramidal descending fibers, they are not present in the pyramids of the medulla, so they are called as extrapyramidal tracts. These extrapyramidal tracts, they include all motor pathways, they are not part of the pyramidal system. Upper motor neurons of these tracts, they are present in the subcortical centers and they are not present in the cerebral cortex. These fibers, they do not pass through pyramids, and lower motor neurons for these tracts, they are also same as the pyramidal tracts, that is the lower motor neurons, they lie in the anterior horn motor neurons. And these extrapyramidal tracts, they consist of rubrospinal tract, vestibulospinal tract, reticulospinal tract, tectospinal tract and oliospinal tract. Main function of this extrapyramidal tracts, that is they mainly responsible or they act on the axial muscles which maintain the balance and the posture. So these tracts, they are mainly responsible for maintenance of posture and maintenance of equilibrium. These tracts, they mainly act on the proximal joints of limbs controlling the coarse movements of proximal joints. These pyramidal tracts, they mainly act on the distal joints and they controls the precise skillful movements, and this extrapyramidal, they act on the coarse movements on the proximal joints of limb. This tract, they are also responsible for reflex movements of head, neck and eyes. Now we will see one by one. So first we will see about this rubrospinal tract. Rubrospinal tract, it arises in the red nucleus which is situated in the midbrain. First we will see location of this tract. Rubrospinal tract, it is situated in lateral funiculus of spinal cord, ventral to this lateral corticospinal tract. Then origin, course and termination of this tract. This red nucleus, it is present in the midbrain. The fibers after arising neurons of this red nucleus, that is the origin, it is present in this neurons of red nucleus. So fibers after arising, they cross to the opposite side in the ventral tegmental decussation. That posterior part of midbrain, it is called as tegmentum, and as this decussation, it is present in the ventral part of midbrain, ventral part of tegmentum, so it is called as ventral tegmental decussation. So these fibers arising from this red nucleus, they cross to the opposite side in the ventral tegmental decussation and they descend downward on the opposite side through the pons medulla and descend to the lateral funiculus of spinal cord, that is the rubrospinal tract. This tract, it extends throughout the spinal cord. Now termination, this tract, it is having same termination as that of the corticospinal tract. So these fibers, they first relay in the lamina number 5, 6, 7 and through the interneurons of these lamina 5, 6, 7, they terminate on the motor neurons of spinal cord, that is the alpha and gamma motor neurons, and the fibers arising from these neurons, alpha and gamma motor neurons, they supply skeletal muscles. Function of this tract, it facilitates the activity of flexor muscle and inhibits the activity of extensor muscle. So it is having the same function as that of the corticospinal fibers. They are also having the facilitating effect on the flexor muscles and inhibitory effect on the extensor muscle. So this is the termination of this rubrospinal tract. Next is the tectospinal tract. So this tract location, it is present in the anterior funiculus. Tectospinal tract present in anterior funiculus, lateral to this anterior corticospinal tract and medial to vestibulospinal tract. And this tract, it extends only up to the cervical region. In the remaining part, that is in the thorax, lumbar region and sacral region, it is absent. It is only present up to the cervical region. Now this tectospinal tract, it arises in the tectum, posterior most part of the midbrain, the part which lies posterior to the cerebral aqueduct. The cerebral aqueduct, it is the cavity of midbrain. The part of this midbrain which lies posterior to the cerebral aqueduct, it is called as tectum, and this tectum, it is occupied by the colliculi, that is the superior colliculi and inferior colliculi, and this tectospinal tract, it takes origin from the superior colliculus of midbrain. So origin of this tract, the neurons of this superior colliculus, fibers arising from these neurons, they cross in the ventral tegment, they cross in the dorsal tegmental decussation. Rubrospinal, they cross in the ventral tegmental decussation, and these tectospinal fibers, they cross in the dorsal tegmental decussation, because this decussation, it lies in the dorsal part of tegmentum. Then they, after decussating, they descend downward on the contralateral side through the pons medulla, and then they descend to the anterior funiculus of spinal cord. Termination, they terminate in the lamina 6 and neurons of the lamina 6, 7, and through these interneurons they terminate on the motor neurons of the spinal cord, that is alpha and gamma motor neurons, and fibers arising from this alpha and gamma motor neurons, they supply the muscles, that is the skeletal muscles of that head and neck, because this tract it extends only up to the cervical region. Function of this tract it mainly responsible for the reflex movement of the head and neck. At the time of ascending tracts, I have told that spinotectal tract. Function of spinotectal tract, that is it is mainly form the pathway for this spino-visual reflex. That spino-visual reflex means that is the reflex turning of head, neck and eyes towards the site of stimulus. I will tell one example. If anybody pinch you suddenly, that you don't know about that, then what can you do? You rotate your neck and head, eyes toward the site of stimulus. Now that information about that pinch, that is nociceptive stimulation, that is carried by that spinotectal tract to the tectum, that is to the superior colliculus, and for the movements of head and neck towards the site of stimulus, that information it is carried by this tectospinal tract to the up to the cervical region for the turning of this head and neck, reflex turning of head and neck, and also that information goes to the cranial nerve nuclei, that is the 3rd, 4th and 6th nuclei, which are responsible for that movements of the eyes toward the site of stimulus. So this tract, function of this tectospinal tract, it is responsible for reflex movement of head, neck and eyes toward the site of stimulus, and that is about the spino-visual pathway. So this spino-visual pathway means that is the turning of head, neck towards the site of stimulus, that is stimulus like nociceptive stimulus, auditory stimulus or visual stimulus. So this is about the tectospinal tract. Then next is the vestibulospinal tracts. Now this vestibulospinal tracts, they arise from the vestibular nuclei, and as its name suggests, this vestibular nuclei, they are directly connected with the vestibule, and you know this vestibule, it is present in the internal ear and which is responsible for the maintenance of equilibrium. So this tract, vestibulospinal tract, it is mainly responsible for the maintenance of that equilibrium and posture. There are 4 vestibular nuclei which are situated at the junction of, first we will see about this location of this tract. It is located in the anterior funiculus in between tectospinal tract and tectospinal tract and oliospinal tract. Then about its origin, so there are 4 vestibular nuclei, that is superior, inferior, lateral and medial, and they are present at the junction of pons and medulla. There are 2 vestibulospinal tract, that is the lateral vestibulospinal tract and medial vestibulospinal tract. So first we will see about this lateral vestibulospinal tract, which is present in the anterior funiculus. Origin, that lateral vestibular nucleus, fibers arising from this nucleus, they descend downward on the same side, that is uncrossed fibers, they descend downward through the medulla and they descend in the anterior funiculus of spinal cord. This tract, it is present throughout the spinal cord, and these fibers, they terminate first in the lamina number 7, 8, and through these interneurons of these laminae, they terminate on the anterior horn cells, that is the alpha and gamma motor neurons, and through this alpha and gamma motor neurons, the axons of these neurons, they pass through the ventral root, then spinal nerve, and they supply the skeletal muscles. And functionally this tract, it is facilitated to the extensor muscle, that is it supplies the anti-gravity muscles which are responsible for the maintenance of posture, and this tract, it is facilitated to the extensor muscles and inhibitory to the flexor muscles opposite to the rubrospinal tract, and functionally this tract as it supplies or as it is stimulated to the anti-gravity extensor muscles, so it is responsible for maintenance of posture and equilibrium. Then next is the medial vestibulospinal tract. This medial vestibulospinal tract, it is not present separately, but its fibers, they descend through the medial longitudinal fasciculus. This medial longitudinal fasciculus, it is the bundle of fibers which is present within the brain stem, and it connects various cranial nerve nuclei present in the brain stem, and that medial longitudinal fasciculus, it extends up to the cervical region. So this medial vestibulospinal tract, it also extends up to the cervical region. Its fibers, they take origin from medial vestibular nucleus, then they descend downward on the same side along with the fibers of medial longitudinal fasciculus, and this tract, it is present up to the cervical region only, and functionally this tract, it terminates on the lamina 6, 7 and 8, and through these interneurons of these laminae, it terminates on the neurons of motor neurons of spinal cord, that is alpha and gamma motor neurons, and through this gamma and alpha motor neurons, it supplies the extensor muscles of the head and neck. So this is the function. It is stimulated to the extensor muscles, but as it extends only up to the cervical region, so it is stimulated to the extensors of the head and neck. So this is about the medial vestibulospinal tract. Now we will see about this reticulospinal tract. This reticular formation, from your physiology you know in detail. So this reticular formation means, that is, these are the groups of neurons which are interrupted by the bundles of fibers, that is the reticular formation which is present throughout the brainstem. There are two reticulospinal tracts, that is, one arises in the reticular formation of pons, and second arises in the reticular formation in the medulla. So the tract which arises from the reticular formation in the pons, that is called as pontine reticulospinal tract, or it is also called as medial reticulospinal tract. So after taking origin from the reticular formation in the pons, fibers descend downward through the medulla, and then they descend in the anterior funiculus of the spinal cord. Then these fibers, they relay first in the lamina 7, 8, and through these interneurons, they relay in the motor neurons of spinal cord, that is the alpha and gamma motor neurons, and fibers arising from this alpha and gamma motor neurons, they pass through this ventral root and they supply the skeletal muscles. Functionally, this medial reticulospinal tract, which arises from this pontine reticular formation, it is inhibitory to the flexor and excitatory to the extensors. So its action, it is similar to that of the vestibulospinal tract, that is, it is excitatory or facilitated to the extensor muscles and inhibitory to the flexor muscles. So this tract, it plays important role in maintenance of posture. This reticulospinal tract, it also carries some descending fibers. They relay in the posterior horn cell neurons, that is sensory neurons of posterior horn, and here they modulate the transmission of sensory information at the level of this posterior horn, that is the medial reticulospinal tract. Then second reticulospinal tract, it arises from the reticular formation of this medullary reticular formation, and it is also called as lateral reticulospinal tract. Origin, it arises from that reticular nuclei in the medulla and main nucleus, that is called as gingiantocellular nucleus, and fibers after arising from this nucleus, they descend downward and they descend to the lateral funiculus of spinal cord, and these descending fibers through this lateral reticulospinal tract, they carry the fibers, that is the autonomic fibers, which relay in this intermediate region of spinal cord, that is in the region of lateral horn, which is present in thoracolumbar segment and the sacral segment. And these fibers, they carry information from the higher centers, autonomic centers, that is mainly the hypothalamus. So from the hypothalamus, that fibers first relay in this reticular formation of medulla, and from this reticular formation of medulla, these autonomic fibers, they descend through this lateral reticulospinal tract, and then they relay in the intermedio-medial and intermedio-lateral nuclei of the spinal cord. So this is about the reticulospinal tract. Now another small tract, that is the oliospinal tract, and as its name itself suggests, this tract, it arises from the inferior olivary nucleus, and this inferior olivary nucleus, it is mainly under the influence of that cerebellum. So information from the cerebellum, it is carried to the spinal cord through this olivary nucleus. So the fibers arises in this olivary nucleus, they descend downward, they cross and they descend downward, and they terminate in the anterior horn cells of spinal cord, that is in the lower motor neurons of the anterior horn cells of the spinal cord. This is about the extrapyramidal descending tracts, and these are the rubrospinal tract, which is having facilitatory effect on the flexors and inhibitory effect on the extensor. Then vestibulospinal tract, it is having facilitatory effect on the extensors and inhibitory effect on the flexors. Then reticulospinal tract, that is medial reticulospinal tract, it is inhibitory to the flexors and facilitatory to the extensors. And lateral reticulospinal tract, it mainly carries that autonomic fibers to the lateral horn of spinal cord, and its action, it is opposite to the medial reticulospinal tract. It is facilitatory to the flexors and inhibitory to the extensors. So this is about the descending tracts of spinal cord. Now there are other descending fibers in this spinal cord, that is the descending autonomic fibers, that is higher centers for this autonomic system in the brain, that is mainly in the hypothalamus, then also some areas in the cerebral hemispheres. Fibers from these areas, they descend through this descending autonomic fibers to the spinal cord, and then they terminate in the autonomic neurons in the lateral horn of thoracic and upper lumbar segments, which is sympathetic in function, and sacral segments, which is parasympathetic in function. This table shows differences in the pyramidal tracts and the extrapyramidal tracts. These pyramidal tracts, they consist of corticospinal and the corticonuclear fibers or tracts. Extrapyramidal tracts, they arise from the subcortical centers, and they consist of reticulospinal, tectospinal, rubrospinal, vestibulospinal and oliospinal tracts. These pyramidal tracts, they arise from the cerebral cortex, that is mainly the motor cortex, and these extrapyramidal, they arise from the subcortical centers such as red nucleus, tectum, reticular formation, olivary nucleus and vestibular nuclei. These pyramidal tracts, they act on anterior horn cells, that is alpha and gamma motor neurons. Extrapyramidal, they also act on the same neurons, that is the alpha and gamma motor neurons. The impulses reach to the anterior horn cells directly from cerebral cortex in case of pyramidal tracts. In case of extrapyramidal, it is the polysynaptic pathway. First, these impulses from the cortex, they relay in other subcortical centers, and from these subcortical centers, they relay in the spinal cord. These pyramidal tracts, they are mainly concerned for the mainly concerned for the voluntary, skillful and precise movements of the skeletal muscles. And these extrapyramidal tracts, they are mainly concerned with inhibition or facilitation of various flexor or extensor reflexes, and thus they plays important role in maintenance of tone and equilibrium. So that is, they are mainly responsible for the maintenance of posture. Pyramidal tract lesions leads to increased muscle tone due to absence of control over anterior horn cells due to the damage to these corticospinal fibers. That control over these anterior horn cells is removed, and these anterior horn cells, they become hyperactive. Extrapyramidal tract lesions leads to spasticity, that is increased tone, and clasp knife rigidity. In this pyramidal tract, there is loss of skillful, precise, voluntary movements. And evolutionary, this pyramidal system, it is recent in origin, and this extrapyramidal system, it is older. Now we will see about clinical anatomy of this spinal cord. Now this spinal cord, it is pathologically affected, and there are many causes for this pathological lesions of spinal cord, and most common is the trauma to the spinal cord. Other reasons for this pathological lesions, that is the degeneration, demyelination, infections, tumors, or impairment of blood supply to the spinal cord. Most common is the trauma to the spinal cord, and that trauma, that may be due to in motorcycle accidents, sport related injuries, fall from the height, gunshot injuries, or stab wounds. And when there is trauma to the spinal cord, it may lead to complete injury or complete damage of the spinal cord. It may lead to half damage of the spinal cord, or there may be damage to the some part of the spinal cord. In this diagram, first diagram, this is, you see, that is, there is written as complete cord transection or complete cord transection syndrome. Here there is a complete damage to the spinal cord. In this anterior half part of this cord, it is damaged, and that is called as anterior cord syndrome. In this third diagram, only central part it is damaged, and that is called as central cord syndrome. And last diagram, this lateral half of the part of spinal cord, it is damaged, that is the Brown-Sequard syndrome. In this first diagram, there is complete damage. This condition, it is called as complete transection of spinal cord, and in Brown-Sequard syndrome, there is only half part, lateral half it is damaged, that is called as hemisection of the spinal cord. In your examination, many times short note it is asked on this Brown-Sequard syndrome. Now we will see one by one these syndromes. Cord syndrome, complete transverse cord lesion. So this complete transverse cord lesion means there is, and it is commonly due to the trauma, and in this complete cord transection syndrome or complete transverse section of spinal cord, there is complete damage to that segment of the spinal cord. And when there is complete transverse section of spinal cord, that leads to the loss of all sensations and paralysis of all muscles at and below the level of lesion. Then next is the anterior cord lesion. This anterior cord lesion, it is also called as anterior spinal artery syndrome, and its name itself suggests that is, it is due to the impairment or lesion in the blood supply or lesion to the artery. In this anterior cord syndrome, the primary blood supply to the anterior portion of the spinal cord, it is interrupted, and it is supplied, this anterior part, it is supplied by the anterior spinal artery. So this blood supply to this anterior part, it is interrupted, and that leads to causing ischemia or infarction of the spinal cord in the anterior 2/3 of the spinal cord and medulla oblongata, because the anterior spinal artery, it also supplies anterior part of medulla. And when there is that damage to this anterior part of spinal cord, that leads to it is characterized by loss of motor functions below the level of injury. That means this anterior 2/3 part of this spinal cord, it is damaged because it is supplied by that anterior spinal artery. And you know, in the lateral funiculus there is the lateral corticospinal tract, then lateral spinothalamic tract, and due to this there is the motor function lost below the level of injury. At the same time, loss of sensation carried by this anterior column, anterolateral column, that is the pain and temperature sensation, because this lateral spinothalamic tract, it is also damaged, which is present in the lateral funiculus. So in this anterior cord syndrome there is loss of motor function with preservation of position, vibration and touch sensation. Why there is preservation of this position, vibration and touch sense, that is the fine touch? Because this sensation they are carried by this tracts of dorsal funiculus, that is the fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus. So they are present in posterior part. So this sensation they are preserved. Then posterior cord syndrome. Posterior cord syndrome means there is damage to this posterior part of spinal cord, and as you know, this posterior part of the spinal cord, it mainly consists of, that is the posterior funiculus tract, that is the fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus. So these tracts they are mainly damaged in this posterior cord syndrome. So this posterior cord syndrome, it is a condition caused by lesion of the posterior portion of spinal cord. It can be caused by an interruption to the posterior spinal artery. Unlike anterior cord syndrome, it is very rare condition, and clinical presentation in this posterior cord syndrome is there is loss of proprioception, loss of vibration sensation, loss of 2-point discrimination and loss of light touch, because all these sensations they are carried by this fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus, which is situated in the posterior funiculus of spinal cord. Then Brown-Sequard syndrome or hemisection of spinal cord. In this Brown-Sequard syndrome or hemisection of spinal cord, this lateral half of spinal cord, it is damaged, and main cause for this hemisection of spinal cord or Brown-Sequard syndrome is the gunshot injuries or stab wound injuries. In this, that is the lateral half of this complete lateral half of spinal cord is damaged, and that is this Brown-Sequard syndrome. This is caused due to the hemisection of spinal cord and various clinical features due to this hemisection of spinal cords. So below the level of lesion there is ipsilateral upper motor neuron paralysis caused by pyramidal tract damage, because in this lateral half, you know, this lateral funiculus, there is lateral corticospinal tract, and as there is the damage to lateral corticospinal tract, that leads to paralysis of the voluntary muscles on the same side. Then ipsilateral loss of conscious proprioceptive sensations caused due to the damage to the posterior white funiculus. This posterior white funiculus, it consists of fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus, and they carry, that is the proprioceptive sensation, fine touch, vibration from the same side of the body, because these fibers they cross to the opposite side in the medulla. So there is loss of that sensation, proprioceptive sensations on the same side of body. That is ipsilateral loss of conscious proprioceptive sensations caused due to the damage to the posterior white column, and there is contralateral loss of pain and temperature and crude touch sensation due to the damage to lateral spinothalamic tract. In this lateral funiculus there is lateral spinothalamic tract, and this lateral spinothalamic tract, it carries fibers of pain and touch temperature. Our anterior spinothalamic tract, it carries fibers of crude touch, and both these tracts, they carry fibers from the opposite side of the body, because these are the cross tracts. So there is loss of pain, touch, temperature on the contralateral side of the body. So in this diagram you can see that is this B here written B, this is the site of injury. So there is loss of pain, touch, temperature due to this lateral spinothalamic tract damage on the contralateral side, but there is damage to the dorsal column on the same side. So there is loss of that proprioceptive sensation of vibration on the same side of lesion. Then at the level of lesion, there is loss of all motor activities, as well as there are loss of all types of sensation in case of this Brown-Sequard syndrome. In this diagram you can see that this is the site of lesion. Then on the contralateral side, that is faint yellow color, on the contralateral side there is impairment of pain and temperature sensation, and this blue colored, there is paralysis of muscles of the same side due to the lesion of this pyramidal fiber, that is the corticospinal fibers, and also there is impairment of joint position sensation and the accurate touch sensation on the same side. So in this Brown-Sequard syndrome, there is loss of motor activity on the same side of lesion and loss of pain and temperature sensation on the opposite side of lesion. Now in this Brown-Sequard syndrome, that is the hemisection of spinal cord, which structures are damaged? That is, there is damage to dorsal column, there is damage to there is damage to the dorsal column, there is damage to the lateral white column, and also there is damage to this anterior funiculus or anterior white column, and also damage to that gray matter of that local cord segment, and also damage to these nerve roots, that is the anterior nerve roots which arise from this anterior horn, and the posterior nerve root which arise from that posterior horn. So this is about the Brown-Sequard syndrome. Then next we will see about the central cord syndrome, and its name itself suggests central cord means lesion lies in the center part of the spinal cord, and this central cord syndrome, it is mainly observed in the syringomyelia. This syringomyelia, it is the condition in which there are, that is, formation of syringo means cavities or cyst. So formation of cavities or cyst in the gray matter of spinal cord around the central canal, and these cavities, they may communicate with the central canal or they may not communicate with the central canal. So as these cavities, they enlarge in size, and as you know that in this anterior white commissure enter to the central canal, there is crossing of two tracts, that is the crossing of lateral corticospinal and the crossing of anterior spinothalamic tract and crossing of lateral spinothalamic tract. This lateral spinothalamic tract, it carries the sensation of pain and temperature from the opposite side, and anterior spinothalamic tract, it carries the sensation of crude touch from the opposite side. And as these cavities, they enlarge in size, they may compress on these decussating fibers of this anterior spinothalamic and anterior and lateral spinothalamic tracts, and that interrupts the fibers of lateral spinothalamic that passes in front of the central canal. So due to this, there is loss of pain and temperature sensation on both sides. Why they on the both sides? Because there is damage to at the crossing point, that is the both side fibers, they get damaged, and So loss of pain and temperature sensation on both sides, but proprioceptive sensation and touch sensation, they are spared. Why? Because this sensation they are carried by this dorsal funiculus, that is the proprioceptive sensation, it is carried by this dorsal funiculus, and this condition it is called as sensory dissociation. That means there is loss of pain and temperature sensation, but proprioception and light touch it is retained, and that is called as sensory dissociation or dissociated anesthesia. This syringomyelia, it is common in the cervical and the upper thoracic region. So there is mainly loss of pain and temperature sensation on both sides, in both upper extremity and in the anterior part of this chest. So in this diagram you can see the central part of spinal cord damage in case of this syringomyelia. Then other lesions of this spinal cord, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. In this amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, there is degeneration of anterior horn neurons, that is the motor neurons, and in this case there is lesion, that is the lower motor neuron type of paralysis, which is characterized by, that is the flaccid type of paralysis, loss of reflexes and atrophy of muscles. Then second is the subacute combined degeneration, and this is common in the deficiency of intrinsic factor which is required for absorption of vitamin B12, and in this subacute combined degeneration mainly there is degeneration of lateral and dorsal funiculi. So there is loss of pain, touch, temperature sensation, and also loss of proprioceptive sensations. Then next condition, that is the spina bifida. This is the congenital anomaly, that is developmental anomaly. In this spina bifida, that is there is no development of arches of vertebra and the spine of vertebra. This spina bifida occulta means there is only defect in the vertebra, that spinal cord and meninges they are normal, only defect lies in the bone. Meningocele, there is defect in the bone, but meninges they protrude through this bony defect. Meningomyelocele means that is there is bony defect, but through this bony defect that meninges as well as tissue of spinal cord that protrudes through that bony defect, and the condition that is called as rachis-chiasis, that is there is no development of spinal cord and meninges. So this is about the clinical anatomy of spinal cord. So this is completion of your ascending and descending tracts of spinal cord. Now in the next lecture we will see about medulla oblongata, and that lecture we will see medulla on next Monday. But before that you read this ascending and descending tracts, because if you understand this ascending and descending tracts clearly, then it is very easy to understand about the medulla, because all these tracts they goes through this medulla. Thank you. Take care. Have a good day.